Hello, wonderful subscribers, and if you're new to my channel, you are also welcome. Greetings to you. Today, I want to take you on how I achieved this particular kind of dress. It's an overlapping cape that overlaps from the front to the back. You can see, right? And the beautiful thing about this dress is it can be styled in different ways. It's a kind of a 3 or 4 in 1 kind of dress, whether you're going for a wedding, a birthday party, whatever kind of all one bear, celebration that you're going for. This dress is suitable for it, okay? And you can style it the way you want. You can see how beautiful each style comes out. So let's dive into the tutorial. Now here I have my pattern paper. My pattern paper is not on fold, it's just a single pattern paper. So I'll go ahead and mark out all the needed lines for my measurements. First of all, I'm going to subtract 9 inches at the top part of the pattern paper. That 9 inches will help us achieve our cape. All right, we're just going to cut this cape just the way you cut your boo gown. The way you do your cut together shoulder when you're cutting boo gown. That's how we are going to achieve this cape, okay? Because we are not going to join it, we are cutting it together with the gown. So by subtracting 9 inches at the top part, is going to give us the exact length we need for this cape. Then after that, I'll move to determine from that line of where we subtracted 9 inches, that line is our shoulder line. So from that shoulder line, we come down to my armhole depth, which is 7.5, then to the bust point, to the underbust, to the half length, which will serve as our waistline, then to our hip, then to the last dress length that we are going to use. So having marked out all those lines, mark out all these lines, I'm using my marker to thicken the lines so that it can be visible. I first marked out the lines with a pencil. Now I'm using marker to thicken the lines. So I'm done with that. What next I'm going to do now is to label my lines. So this is my chest line, which is from shoulder to my armhole depth is my chest line, and I'm using 7.5 for that as my chest line. It depends on how deep your armhole is. Then the next one is my bust point, my underbust, my waistline, and my hip. Having labeled my lines, the next thing I'm going to do is to determine our neckline. Now all the spaces where I'm pointing at is going to be our shoulder, and you know how you do your cut together shoulder when you're cutting boob, right? And that is what all those spaces is going to serve for us. So on that shoulder line, we determine our neckline length, which is 3 inches, then come down with 2 inches for the neckline depth. I'm using 2 inches because I want the neckline to wrap around the neckline. I don't want it too low, so 2 inches is the perfect ideal inches that I want. So it depends on how low or how high you want it to be. You can adjust. If you want it at 3 inches, 3 by 3 inches, 3 by 1 inch, anyhow you want it. It depends on how you want to define your neckline. So I've done that, and I'm just going to get the neckline curve with my curve ruler. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I've done that. After this, the next thing I'm going to do is to determine all my body circumference, bust circumference, underbust circumference, waist circumference, hip circumference. All those things is what I'm going to determine now. So my bust circumference is 34 divided by 4. Then my underbust is 29 divided by 4. Whatever you know how you divide your circumferences, then you add some inches for seam allowance. Then my waist circumference is 28 divided by 4. 28 is the full waist circumference, then divided by 4, because if you are folding on a normal folding, you have to fold your fabric into 4, right? but now we are using only one piece of pattern paper, so it's not on fold, but we are still imputing like as though we are cutting on a folded fabric that is folded into four. I hope you understand this part. So I've done marking out those points, my boss. Then I have to uh, impute my bust measurement also on my chest measurement, you understand. So I've done that, and I connect all the dots together. Ignore the parts that is looking somehow. It's because of that pattern paper, it's not lapping very well at that, from that waist to hip point. But once I touch it, you can see that the lines are accurate, right? Now going down to the length of the gown, we are going to go in by 1 inch. Normally, if you want to pencil your gown or your skirt, you go in by 2 inches, 2.5 inches, 3 inches to get a very good pencil. But we don't want to pencil this particular gown. We just wanted it to have the same, let it be free. Okay, it's not going to be pencil. All right, so it's just like a line, you get the point. So after that, the next thing, I go to that chest line, because that's where will serve as our armhole, and I'm going to curve it in so that it will not be sharp. Then when we cut, that end will not be sharp, you get, because that's the point that is going to serve as our armhole. So when I'm done doing that, I'll go to the neckline and extend our neckline, that line on that we used to determine our neckline. I will extend it to the upper part, that space, that 9 inches space we gave at the upper part. I will extend the line back up, right? Because that's how we want to determine the space that cape is going to have at the back. Okay, so we are taking our neckline from the front all the way to the back, but we are not covering it. At the back is going to be straight, you can see, right? Now, having achieved this, the next thing is you cross-check your measurements before cutting and be sure that everything is in alignment. So I've done that, and I'm going straight to go and what? Cut. So you cut carefully. Ignore my scissors. This particular scissors, I use it for cutting paper alone. Okay, I don't use the scissors I use in cutting fabric to cut paper. You know, most times it can reduce its sharpness when you're using it on both paper and on both fabric. You get the point, right? So now I'm doing the cutting. You just cut carefully, okay? Cut carefully. Then after, the next thing I'm going to do after my cutting is we are going to impute that by the side. I don't want any dart to be at the front part, so I'll be imputing my dart by the side of the dress. That's from those points where we connected our body circumference. Those measurements we took and we cut out by the side that you will use for joining. That's the side that I'm going to use to achieve my dart. Okay, now you can see how everything came out. You can see how this cape is going to overlap. It's already giving you a vision of what it's going to look like. Now also have it in mind that this is the length of the pattern paper that I'm using. Then if you're going to use this exact length for your gown, then it's fine, but just know that you can increase the length. You can increase the length of the cape, and you can also increase the length of the gown. If you want it to be a very maxi gown, you can increase the length. You can increase the length by adding more pattern paper to the down part and adding more pattern paper to the cape part if you want it to be a very long cape. All right, now back to creating our dart. Now we are going to create our dart on our waist. The reason is so that our waist will snatch very well. It's not going to bulge, not going to be too free. It will still give us that effect that imputing that in front will still give us. So first of all, the dart I'm going to do here is 1 inch dart. So I'm going to use half an inch. I've marked out that half an inch on the waistline. Then I'll connect that half inch to the hip and to the bust line. Then you know that if with this half an inch, if you put it on both sides of the dress, like assuming this pattern paper is on fold, it will give us 1 inch dart, you get, exactly. So I've connected the lines from the waist to the bust point and from the waist to the hip, and I'll cut it out like so, as you can see, right? Hope I'm not too fast, but you're understanding. At least my voice is in sync with what I'm doing. Okay, so you cut it out, you will see how deeper that waistline is, unlike the first time. You can see it, right? How deeper the waistline is. So that's how I achieved my dart. The dart I didn't achieve in front, I achieved it by the side of the dress. This is how you can, manipulate your dart on your dresses. One beautiful thing about sewing is you keep learning, right? You keep achieving things the way you interpret it. Now the next place we are going to go to is our back. We are done with the front side. Then on our back, we are now going to subtract or both that 9 inches space we give at the front, then we'll subtract it out. Then our back is going to start from exactly our chest line, which is 7.5. That's our armhole, that line where we get our armhole curve. That is where that back is going to start from. Okay, so that's what I showed you, and I've gone ahead to mark out my lines, the bust point, the waist and the hip. Then I also marked out my zip allowance. You can see my 2 inches zip allowance. The back is not going to take a lot from us, it's just very simple. So what I'll go ahead to do is impute our body circumference, my bust circumference divided by 4, my waist circumference divided by 4, and my hip circumference divided by what? By 4. Then that is what I'm going to do at this point. So I'm done marking all of them. The next thing I'm going to do, just the normal thing, connect the lines from the bust points to the waist, then to the hip. Sorry, my camera went off at this point, so it couldn't capture when I was joining them and even imputing the dart, but I will still explain. Now remember when I said at the back we subtracted both the 9 inches and we started from our chest line, which is 7.5. So it depends on what your chest line is. It might be 9, might be 10, it might be 8. You start from it. So now I imputed my body circumferences. That's what I'm marking. That means that first line you're seeing is the first line for all my body circumference. Then the inner line, which is the second line, is in line for the dart. And I'm also using 1 inch, but it's half inch that I use there, so that on both sides it will be 1 inch. I hope you understand. So I used half inch on that, still on the waist. You know that I'll aim for this dart is so that after stitching our waist will snatch very well. So it's still that same half inch that I use in front that I use at the back. Okay, so from the waistline I got my half inch. Then from there I connect it to the bust point or the chest line, whichever one. Connected it to the bust point or the chest line. Then from the waist too, I connected it to the hip point. So that is what I'm actually showing you at this point. So having done that, the next place is my zip allowance. We want to remove the zipper bulging so that our zip will not bulge. You understand? We have to do the same thing. I had to use half an inch to achieve that so that on both sides, when you're done cutting both sides, you know that the back piece always come out as 2. You understand it, right? So that when you're done cutting out on your fabric, on the 2 pieces, the dart will be exactly 1 inch. So using half an inch, I connected to the bust point and to the hip line too. You understand? Now you can say I have marked on that first line. That's not where I'm going to cut. Where I'm going to cut now is on the second line to cut out where our dart started from. Okay, so that is what I'm doing now. Just cut carefully through all your lines on your paper. Just know that anyhow you want your dress to come out, manipulating your paper, your pattern paper will definitely give you that particular design or shape or style that you want your dress to come out. That is the beauty of pattern drafting. That's why when you see most dresses that seems complicated, with pattern you can achieve them. You get my point? So pattern drafting is beautiful. But if you are still a freehand pro, you can still manipulate on your fabric, but the only thing is sometimes manipulating your fabric can make you waste your fabric. So yeah, you can see I'm done cutting the back piece, and and I'm labeling it back and front. You can see how it is now. I just place it side by side. You can see that my back piece is starting from exactly the 7.5 inches chest line. You understand? That's where I'm going to start to join both the back and the front piece together. Now don't forget, again, I said at the middle of this tutorial, I told you that, however you want your dress to come on, you want it very long, add more pattern paper to your pattern before drafting. Add more part. If you want your cape to be longer, also add more pattern paper to it. If you're managing pattern paper like me, you can cut like this. Then when you're cutting on your fabric, you can also extend. Okay, if your fabric is enough, you can extend. So we've come to the end of this tutorial. Thank you for sticking with me. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.